and all of the hullabaloo over the government shutdown and everything else that was happening at the end of last week. This one might have escaped your notice. It happened on Friday, and I'm going to reel off some concepts for you. Republican, MAGA, Trump supporter, sexual abuse of a child, cover-up, scandal. What does that sound like? I bet you're thinking Epstein files, right? No. Texas megachurch pastor Robert Morris pleads guilty in an Oklahoma courtroom to 5 felony counts of lewd or indecent acts with a child. Morris, age 64, entered this plea agreement. It's negotiated with the prosecutors. Morris was given a 10-year prison sentence. However, it's suspended. He will only serve 6 months in the county jail. He must register as a sex offender and pay $250,000 in restitution. Now, I, like many of you, agree that a suspended sentence in only 6 months in the county jail is woefully inadequate. I will say it was negotiated, meaning it was agreed upon by not only the prosecution and the defense, but the victim in this case. The victim in this case, she approved this plea. Her name is Cindy Clemishire, Clemishire. Cindy Clemishire was sexually abused by Robert Morris in the 1980s when she was living as a little girl in the state of Oklahoma. At the time, Morris was working as a traveling preacher. And you may ask yourself, why did it take decades to get to justice? Well, I'm sorry to say that it's not because the judicial system took that long. It's actually because the way that our society is teed up, it is not easy for victims of sexual abuse to come forward. And I will say, and the facts of this case are kind of specific, but I will say it's very reminiscent of the Epstein files, is it not? A girl 12 years old is sexually abused by a person of power, or in a perception of a position of power. And if you think about this, the guy was a preacher. He was staying with her family. I mean, the dynamic there was unbelievably skewed against this little girl reporting it. But we'll get into the details, right? Because the devil is in the details, and the devil is Robert Morris. So here's what happened. In June of 2024, Cindy Clemishire, age 55, she publicly accused Morris of sexually abusing her. And within days, this megachurch that was founded by Morris in 2000 in Southlake, Texas, called Gateway. And when I say megachurch, I'm talking tens of thousands of weekly attendees. I'm going to say that again. Tens of thousands of weekly attendees to Gateway Church, founded by Robert Morris. His sermons broadcast all over the world. His books were bestsellers in evangelical circles, according to this article on NBC News. And here's the kicker. Morris was a faith advisor to convicted felon Donald Trump. I know. None of us are shocked. Anyway, in June of 2024, Cindy publicly accuses Morris of sexual abuse when she was a 12-year-old little girl. Morris steps down from Gateway Church last year. In a statement at the time, and this is the shit that just made me so upset, Morris acknowledges what he described as a, quote, moral failure, end quote, with a, quote, young lady. He says, yes, I had a moral failure with a young lady decades earlier, but he didn't respond to the specifics of Cindy's allegations. Cindy Clemishire tells NBC News that in 1982 on Christmas night, Morris sexually abused her when she was just 12 years old. He was a traveling evangelist. He was in his early 20s. He sometimes stayed with her family in Oklahoma when he was traveling doing his evangelical sermons. After sexually abusing her, he told her, never tell anyone about this. It will ruin everything. Cindy kept this secret until 1987, which was 5 years after the abuse started. Because, by the way, it wasn't that one time. It happened over years when he would come and stay with the family. Cindy told her parents and the leaders at her church In the late 1980s, Morris then did a, quote, restoration process and returned to the ministry. No one called the police. Talk about a failure for a little girl, right? Who by then was in maybe 17 years old. Cindy was 17. No one calls the police. The church doesn't. Her parents don't. Nobody calls the police. And you ask why? Why more victims of sexual abuse, especially when they're children, why they don't come forward? She reported it to her parents and the church leaders, and they did nothing. Now, fast forward to the mid-2000s, Cindy goes to Robert Morris and the leaders of the Gateway Church, and she says, look, I need $50,000 in restitution for what I spent having to get treatment and therapy for the childhood trauma at the hands of Robert Morris. In 2007, Robert Morris's lawyer at the time wrote a letter to Cindy stating that she bore responsibility for the inappropriate behavior between her and Morris when she was just a little girl. Morris offered to pay $25,000, but any deal fell apart because Cindy refused, to her credit, she refused to sign a non-disclosure agreement. Cindy's courage and bravery to want to be able to tell the truth and to tell her story was profoundly important, right? Because it led to this measure of judicial accountability years later. So we're in the mid-2000s, right? So this deal to be able to have her get reimbursed for her treatment from the childhood trauma, that deal falls apart in the mid-2000s. After Robert Morris resigned from the church, the Oklahoma Attorney General's office opened an investigation. So now, mind you, right, remember this. Morris at the time is where? Morris is in Texas, right? He's running this Gateway Church, right? So after he resigns, the Oklahoma Attorney General's office opens an investigation. Why? Because in Oklahoma, there was a law that allows you to pursue a case of sexual abuse of a child despite the passage of time, because there was a pause on the clock of the statute of limitations when the criminal defendant moves out of state. So because Morris wasn't in Oklahoma, the statute of limitations paused and Cindy was able to bring criminal charges. So in March of 2025, a multi-county grand jury indicted Robert Morris on the 5 felony counts, saying that he abused her from 1982 to 1985. 3 years of sexual abuse of a little girl. So she was 12, 13, 14 years old when this abuse happened. Now, let's talk about Robert Morris a little bit more, because he is somebody that we need to talk about. Robert Morris, at the time of him being indicted in Oklahoma, which was this year in March, spiritual advisor to Donald Trump, and he was incredibly active in Texas politics. But of course, Texas, right? With whom? Governor Greg Abbott. So for example, when it comes to convicted felon Donald Trump in 2020, Trump held a roundtable on transition to greatness, and it was attended by then U.S. Attorney General Bill Barr, other prominent Republicans, and Robert Morris. So Morris resigns in 2024, as we've talked about, after the allegations are made public by Cindy. He resigns from the Gateway Church, and this is the information I wanted to share with you as well. So in 2017, Robert Morris was tapped by Governor Greg Abbott to support what? Texas's bathroom bill that sought to ban transgender people from using their preferred bathroom, in part by arguing that it would allow children to be sexually abused. No, I'm not kidding you. The sexual abuser, Robert Morris, you know, the one who sexually abused a 12-year-old girl for 3-4 years, he was tag teaming with Greg Abbott to demonize and to vilify transgender people. Why? Because he accused them of wanting to use preferred bathrooms to be able to sexually abuse children. During Trump's 2016 presidential campaign, Robert Morris was at least 3 other Dallas area religious leaders who served on Trump's Evangelical Advisory Board. In 2021, he was a part of an effort to mobilize conservatives and evangelicals ahead of Trump's 2024 presidential bid. And for years, Robert Morris and the Gateway Church would show slates of local school board candidates on the church's massive screens in the lead up to certain elections for school board elections. And according to this Texas Trib article, potentially in violation of federal rules that prohibited overt political activity by churches, which, by the way, didn't I recently cover here at the Katie Phang News Channel, because now the IRS wants to be able to do away with that so that churches can be political pulpits, puppets and pulpits. Robert Morris in 2023 showed a list of Republican candidates for the school board races and told his church's roughly 25,000 members, quote, "Many of you see what Satan has been trying to do even in our school systems," end quote. Oh, honey, Satan, I have seen you, and your name is Robert Morris. I mean, the hypocrisy is fucking large, is it not? So, Robert Morris pleads guilty just last week on those 5 counts of lewd or indecent acts to a child. It was in the Osage County Courthouse in Pawhuska, Oklahoma. And this is what Cindy had to say. She said, quote, "Let me be clear. There is no such thing as consent from a 12-year-old child. We were never in an inappropriate relationship. I was not a young lady, but a child. You committed a crime against me." After the guilty plea, one of Morris's lawyers, Bill Mateja, told reporters that Morris pled guilty because he wanted to accept responsibility for his conduct. Morris believes he had already accepted responsibility in the eyes of God, but his plea in court was a way to accept responsibility in the eyes of the law. In November of last year, the Gateway Church actually removed 4 elders after an investigation by an outside law firm revealed that some of those elders knew about Cindy's allegations years ago but failed to act. Ironically, too, Morris sued Gateway, seeking millions of dollars in unpaid retirement benefits, alleging that the church mishandled his resignation and damaged his reputation. The Gateway Church has denied his claims, and that lawsuit remains pending. Cindy has told NBC News that she's now heard from numerous women across the country that were victims of child sexual abuse at the hands of religious leaders, and that her disclosure publicly inspired others to go public with allegations for the very first time. Whew. Some powerful stuff, is it not? And I started this episode talking about how this is not the Epstein files, and yet it is the Epstein files, is it not? It's power and means silencing victims of child sexual abuse and child sex trafficking and child sex predation. And then years later, these victims getting long-awaited closure, like Cindy Clemishire gets in this Robert Morris case. But what about the victims and the survivors of the Epstein files? Now they're witnessing elected officials in D.C. in the Republican Party, the GOP, right? The great old pedophile party. They are saying things like these victims don't have credibility, or they can't support a discharge petition, or they're only letting this drip of information being released from the Pamela Joe DOJ. How are these Epstein files victims and survivors are supposed to feel about closure and about being believed when you see sweetheart plea deals being offered by U.S. Attorney Alex Acosta in the Southern District of Florida to Jeffrey Epstein, and Todd Blanche going and meeting with Ghislaine Maxwell and then giving her a sweetheart minimum security camp move, right? And now conversations allegedly that Trump is going to have with the DOJ about pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell. It is an abomination of our system to treat victims of child sex abuse this way. It just is. So when there's accountability, I'm sharing it with you. And somebody like Robert Morris pleading guilty, having to do jail time, being a registered sex offender, having to pay money, it is so inadequate. I know it is, but people, at least there is some justice. And I wanted to make sure that y'all knew about it, because it is a faith advisor to Donald Trump that was and is a child sex abuser, right? It's an evangelical Republican The hypocrites of our America, running around wanting to condemn gays and transgender people and women and minorities and promoting the hate agenda of Donald Trump and Project 2025. And yet it's them. They're the ones getting busted for the kiddie porn, right? They're the ones that are getting busted for the child sex abuse. They're the ones that are getting busted for their hypocrisy. I know that I would trust a drag queen with my child before I would trust them with an evangelical pastor like Robert Morris. Be mad, be outraged, demand accountability. Let's uplift the survivors. Let's uplift the victims of Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell and somebody like Cindy Clemishire, the survivor of Robert Morris. Katie Phang here. We launched the Katie Phang News Channel in partnership with the Midas Touch Network so we could bring you the latest in legal and political news. Straight, no chaser. So if you're a fellow truth teller, hit that subscribe button and share the word about this channel so we can build a high information America together.